Okay, I'm in. In 1994, two siblings decided that they wanted to get big as screenwriters in Hollywood. Having cut their teeth as writers on Clive Barker stories for Marvel's now defunct Epic Comics imprint, the two siblings penned up a script that was bought by Warner Brothers and turned into the Richard Donner-helmed Sylvester Stallone movie Assassins. The two siblings were upset at the final product, which had been completely rewritten behind their backs, and asked for their names to be taken off the movie. It was then that the pair learned a very important lesson about Hollywood, that it was going to chew you up and spit you out if you just settled on being a writer. If they wanted to actually make it big, they would also have to learn to be directors. Luckily for the two writers, soon to be directors, the deal they made with Warner Brothers for Assassins included 2 more pictures. With the first movie, the two siblings wrote and directed the 1996 film Bound. A low-budget film noir, Bound focuses on the exploits of a lesbian couple and their plot to rip off the mafia for $2 million. The film was more of a vehicle for the siblings to learn how to direct on the job, and while it only just made a little over its budget back at the box office, it was a massive hit among the festival circuits, with critics comparing the two to other new Hollywood contemporaries like Joel and Ethan Coen or Quentin Tarantino. They especially note how the relationship between the two women was seen as unapologetically queer and bereft of any heterosexual gaze.
That's a great tattoo. Beautiful Labras.
The critical success of Bound gave the two siblings the momentum to convince their Warner Brothers producer, Lorenzo di Bonaventura, to use their next movie in their deal to produce a dream project of theirs that they had been workshopping for some time. And once they got Hollywood big shot Joel Silver on board to be the main producer, Warner Brothers had no choice but to cut the directing duo a check for $60 million, a significant investment at the time. But luckily for Warner Brothers, those two siblings were Lana and Lily Wachowski. And the ambitious dream project they were funding was 1999's The Matrix. How to even talk about something as big as The Matrix? I didn't get into The Matrix when it was huge, partially because I was 13 at the time and my parents were pretty strict about me seeing R-rated movies, but also because the blockbuster franchise I had hitched my wagon to was Lord of the Rings. And I didn't catch up to it later because after 2003, the entire franchise suffered a massive backlash and made people question if it was ever good in the first place. It wasn't until the pandemic 3 years ago, where being trapped at my parents' house for most of it, I really started to seek out movies I missed out on, like the Matrix Trilogy. After having watched those movies, I think I can safely say that it might just be one of the most ambitious blockbuster trilogies that we might not ever get again in our lifetimes.
Is it really so hard to believe?
I don't think a series of blockbuster films has ever been so deliberately forward-thinking as the Matrix Trilogy. It pushed the boundaries of newfangled CGI effects that, even in the cold light of 2023, still look impressive. It paid homage to the wire-fu films of the Shaw brothers by way of its unmatched fight choreography. It flaunted its multiracial casting in a way that felt natural and not just ticking off a box. It presented deep and interesting themes on the nature of man's relationship with technology, the self, control, and interrogating the then newfound digital frontier that was the internet. Plus, it's just so fucking cool! Even Resurrections is kinda good with how it's a meta-commentary on the legacy of the Matrix franchise and its commodification, while also being a way for Lana to take the blowtorch to it to ensure Warner Brothers can never use it for endless content. Mission accomplished, baby! But there's still a part of me that wishes they got in when it was still hot, because, to be honest, it was built from nearly everything 13-year-old me dug at the time. Martial arts, internet culture, new metal and techno music, sometimes mixed together. But most importantly, anime. And that little building block led to one of the more unsung projects outside the main trilogy. So the Wachowskis are weebs, let's establish that. You watch The Matrix and you can see that they cribbed a lot from the storyboarding of their favorite anime. So when they somehow created the biggest movie of 1999, a year already packed to the gills with classic cinema, it created a perfect storm of artistic freedom and unleashed studio power that Warner Brothers does not grant to just anyone. And from that storm, the Wachowskis used their weed powers to commission 2003's The Animatrix, a series of 9 short films animated and directed by major figures who had either worked in the anime industry or were near that sphere of influence. And while having these types of anime anthology pieces meant to promote an intellectual property feels quaint today, a project like The Animatrix could have only been done in 2003. Not only was it the result of studios giving two weebs untapped studio power, but also the environment and how anime was being perceived by America. It was still in the throes of a love affair for imported Japanese media thanks to the success of Pokemon, and thanks to the surprise of Miyazaki's Spirited Away winning Best Animated Feature at the Oscars in 2002, it was also in the best interest for Hollywood bigwigs to, at the very least, pretend to pay attention to this art form. But more importantly, 2003 was the year of The Matrix. Thanks to them filming the final 2 movies back to back in one sitting, the Wachowskis wanted to release both the second and third entries of their trilogy in the same year while the hype was still burning. And in between Reloaded's release in May and Revolution's release in November, it was the films of The Animatrix that drip-fed you more Matrix media as you waited for Neo and friends to finish Raging Against the Machines. But after 2003, something happened. Because so many people got caught up in the hype cycle, many felt disappointed that Reloaded and Revolutions did not live up to their lofty expectations. It was almost as if right as Revolutions left theaters, the Matrix franchise as a whole became completely uncool. And while time has certainly been kinder to it than other trilogies, there has been lingering thought processes where people only think that out of this vast multimedia franchise, only the first installment is only worth engaging in, i.e. Jurassic Park syndrome.
I am probably never going to watch 2, never going to watch 3, and never going to watch 4 again for the rest of my life. I will show Matrix 1 to my son 100%, and then I will shamelessly lie and tell him that's it. That was the one and done.
But in some circles, there were some people going to bat for The Animatrix, at the very least respecting the artistry it had on display in spite of being attached to a franchise that to many had worn out its welcome. But as we hit 20 years later on that year of The Matrix, and more people who weren't around for that hype cycle began to reassess the Matrix trilogies as not that bad actually, the question remains, where does The Animatrix fit in 20 years later? Is it still worth engaging with in the same way that stuff like Enter the Matrix isn't? Well, answering that question, I don't think it's going to be easy, nor do I think it's going to be the truth. All you can do at this juncture is follow the white rabbits, or anime possum in this case. Buckle up, Dorothies.
You have selected historical file number 12-1.
But before we sink our teeth into The Animatrix, I feel it's prudent to recap and refresh everybody's memory on the film that began it all. Yes, I'm sure some of you have seen The Matrix before, or at the very least absorbed it via pop cultural osmosis. I'm sure everybody here is familiar with Bullet Time, and the Digital Rain, and the Red Pill, and Going Down the Rabbit Hole, and the Woman in the Red Dress, and the Lobby Shootout, and Residual Self-Image, and the Desert of the Real, and Glitch in the Matrix, and I Know Kung Fu, and Your Mind Makes It Real, and Dodge This, and Mr. Anderson, and There Is No Spoon, and Not Like This, Not Like This, and lest we forget... But I feel you would get more out of The Animatrix, and by extension this video, if I refamiliarized everybody with what happens in The Matrix very briefly. At the very least, I'm trying to save you the labor for having to push pause on this video and watch a movie for 2 hours before coming back. Ready?
Ready!
Okay. Lowly computer programmer Thomas Anderson moonlights as a hacker named Neo. In the middle of his extra-legal computer activities, he finds himself puzzled by a repeated online phrase in forums known only as the Matrix. While at a club one night, he gets into contact with a woman named Trinity who seems to know more about the Matrix and tells him that if he wants to know more, he should seek someone out named Morpheus.
I know why you hardly sleep, why you live alone, and why night after night you sit at your computer. You're looking for him.
The next day at work, Neo gets a FedEx containing a cell phone that Morpheus uses to contact him, telling him that agents and police are on the way to arrest him and he must escape. But after a fear of heights thwarts that escape, Neo is taken in by the agents and becomes acquainted with the enigmatic Agent Smith, who offers to erase his criminal record in exchange on helping him track down this Morpheus. But after Neo gives him the finger...
How about I give you the finger?
The agents do this to him. and implant a robotic bug in him. Hours later, Neo awakens from what he thinks is a nightmare, but is taken in by Trinity, who wants him to meet Morpheus, but not before removing the bug.
Jesus Christ, that thing's real!
At the meeting place, Morpheus offers Neo a choice between two pills, blue to go back to his normal life, or red to reveal the truth.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Neo takes the red one, and after a series of late 90s CGI, Neo wakes up naked in a liquid-filled pod surrounded by similar pods containing other humans. He is then picked up by Morpheus' ship, the Nebuchadnezzar, and while Neo recuperates from a lifetime of physical inactivity,
Why my eyes, sir?
You've never used them before.
Morpheus gives him the scoop. In the early 21st century, a war broke out between humanity and intelligent machines. After humans blocked up the machines' access to solar energy, the machines responded by enslaving humankind and harvesting their biological power while keeping their minds pacified in the Matrix, a shared simulated reality modeled on the world as it was in 1999. In the years following, the remaining free humans took refuge in an underground city called Zion. As he trains Neo, Morpheus explains that he and his crew are rebels who hack into the Matrix to unplug humans and recruit them, and their understanding of the Matrix allows them to bend its rules to their will.
I'm trying to free your mind, Neo, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
But death within the Matrix kills the physical body in the real world, and as rebels, they are often hunted down by agents within the Matrix and sentinels in the real world. By the end of training, Morpheus tells Neo that he could be the One, a human prophesized to free mankind.
I did what I did because I believe that search is over.
Soon afterwards, the team enters the Matrix again so that Neo can visit the Oracle, the program who gave Morpheus the prophecy of the One. The Oracle informs Neo that there's a good chance he might not be the One, and gives him a warning that he will have to choose between Morpheus's life and his own.
You got the gift, but it looks like you're waiting for something.
Before the team can leave, they are ambushed by agents and police who have been tipped off by Cypher, a disgruntled crew member who has betrayed Morpheus in exchange for a deal to be plugged back in to live a better life.
You get my body back in the power plant, reinsert me into the Matrix, I'll get you what you want.
Morpheus gets captured by the agents, and Cypher murders all the other crew members. But before Cypher can murder Trinity and Neo, surviving crew member Tank kills him and pulls them from the Matrix. While Agent Smith is interrogating Morpheus for the access codes to Zion, Neo and Trinity mount a massive rescue where a lot of bullets are shot and helicopters are exploded. They rescue Morpheus in time, but Smith ambushes Neo before he can leave and is seemingly killed, all while Sentinels begin to attack the Nebuchadnezzar. But when all appears to be lost, Neo is revived quite literally by the power of love.
You can't be. Because I love you.
And gains the abilities to perceive and control the Matrix, thus solidifying his status as the One.
How?
He is the One.
He defeats Agent Smith, exits the Matrix just in time for them to shake off the Sentinels, and we get a nice coda with Neo making a telephone call and using his new The One powers to fly away. Cue Rage Against the Machine song. And lo did The Matrix become one of the biggest movies of 1999, spending 3 weeks at #1 at the box office in its run from March 31st to August 5th, netting a massive worldwide gross that rounded up to $463 million, not counting re-releases, and having such an instant impact on popular culture that it was referenced by everyone. Everyone. Everyone.
Free music.
Free music.
Everyone.
You can go back to your regular life and forget any of this ever happened, or you can know the truth about the universe.
The first one, the high heel.
No. We'll do a redo.
Everyone.
So how do we stop him, Morpheus?
And all of this success can be attributed to the Wachowskis being huge weebs. This is where the video gets fun, kids. Anime was always in the identity of the Matrix ever since it was a collective twinkle in the Wachowski sisters' eyes. According to producer Joel Silver, they actually screened Ghost in the Shell for him just to give him an idea of the style they were trying to aim for. Anime is the DNA of the Matrix franchise. So it's the summer of 1999. The Matrix has been out in theaters for a good 3 to 4 months at this time. The Wachowskis and Silver were touring Japan to do press junkets since the film had gotten quite popular in that country. And the sisters, using their newfound Hollywood clout, were able to arrange a lot of meetings with Japanese creators who had inspired them along the way. Coincidentally, many Japanese creators wanted to meet with them as they had also been inspired in kind. One of them was video game auteur Hideo Kojima, whose fandom for the Matrix can definitely be felt in a game he released 2 years later.
I need scissors. 61.
But they were most interested in visiting the creators of the anime they loved, and they were able to do so thanks to visual effects artist and American expat Michael Arias acting as their liaison. Arias had been a young pioneer in the field of visual effects animation, having worked with James Cameron on The Abyss early in his career, and was working for the Tokyo visual effects company Soft Image. This put him in contact with several key people in the anime industry. That, along with his fluency in Japanese, made him an essential go-between for the Wachowskis and their future Japanese collaborators. The Animatrix was originally pitched as a TV series, but budget and time restrictions caused them to dial it back to just being a direct-to-DVD anthology film. Plus, the Japanese creators they wanted to work with felt more comfortable doing 7 to 15-minute short films as opposed to full episodes. The most important thing people should realize about the Animatrix was that it wasn't just a means for the sisters to unapologetically fly their weeb flags. This was a project they did as a way to give back to the people and art that inspired them. Every creator who joined this project was a fan of the Matrix, and the sisters wanted to let them give their own artistic take on the world they created. Production on the Animatrix began in 2000 and took right up until the premiere of Reloaded 3 years later. Arias acted as the main producer, helping the Wachowskis and their Japanese-speaking collaborators interface with each other, while also setting up connections with other producers who provided the money and the resources needed to make this film happen. They were Hiroaki Takeuchi and industry maverick Eiko Tanaka, the head of Studio 4C, who ended up doing the lion's share of the shorts for this project. Unsurprising given that they did one of the best anime anthology films after all. By all accounts, production was kinda hectic. It was a global production that was being partially dictated by the Wachowskis, who were in Australia directing 2 movies back to back and overseeing the production of the video game Enter the Matrix all at the same time. But it did help that the Wachowskis had many of the key architects of the Matrix franchise with them, not just Joel Silver, but also website designer Spencer Lamb and soundtrack composer Don Davis, whose work on the Animatrix made it feel more a part of the franchise than just a separate entity. Flash forward to 2003. The 6th generation of video gaming is at its peak. Linkin Park has released Meteora, Toonami's still airing on weekdays on Cartoon Network. Life is good, except for all the Iraq War and all the lies by our federal government that got us into that mess, but apart from that, life is good. After a massive hype campaign, The Matrix Reloaded hits theaters on May 15th. This is the beginning of a massive campaign of movies and games that will all culminate in the earth-shattering finale at Matrix Revolutions that November. The Animatrix is a part of that campaign. Though it's going to be released on DVD on June 3rd, just a few weeks out from Reloaded, it's also become part of the hype campaign, having shorts like The Second Renaissance and a detective story be cast on the website whatsthematrix.com, and having The Last Flight of the Osiris be screened in theaters in front of the film Dreamcatcher. Probably the only way they could get people to pay tickets to see Dreamcatcher.
You're not Jonesy.
And even if it was a straight to DVD release, this is the period where DVD sales are hot, hot, hot! Coming off the tail of its big summer blockbuster this year, Warner Bros. Has high hopes for the Animatrix just as it does for the rest of the franchise's slates. And then, Reloaded comes out.
Why am I here?
Would you shut up?
While no doubt a box office success, earning 134.3 in its first 4 days, audiences' feelings were a little mixed. While no doubt impressed by the effects and action like always, people chafed against the reveals and twists that kinda robbed the first movie of its magic. And being that this was the dawn of the internet age, word spread faster and the backlash began in earnest. Not a good sign when the MTV Movie Awards has an entire sketch skewering your movie just 2 weeks later.
The MTV Movie Awards are a systemic anomaly inherent to the programming of The Matrix. Although the transport process has altered your consciousness, you irrevocably remain human. ergo concordantly, vis-a-vis. You know what? I have no idea what the hell I'm saying.
People's disappointment for Reloaded had a butterfly effect, and while Revolutions was also kind of a success, there was a noticeable drop in attendance and the reaction was far less kind than Reloaded. The Animatrix unavoidably got caught in this crossfire. It did seem to do well financially, selling 2.7 million copies and netting 68 million in sales revenue, and out of all the Matrix media released that year, it was the one that got the most positive reception from critics. But according to some insiders, the numbers fell below Warner Brothers' expectations, especially for a direct-to-DVD movie that took 3 years to make. We can't hang it on all the Reloaded backlash though. It might be hard to believe, Zoomers, but there was still a stigma against anime 20 years ago that's not there in 2023. Yes, even with anime blowing up on TV and in the movies, people still had gripes with the medium. Despite the undeniable influence of anime on the blockbuster, there were no doubt that there were some Matrix fans out there who saw anime as an inferior and perverse product, and an anime animatrix only reflected poorly on the brand. And even those who didn't have gripes were probably confused about why they were doing this extra material in animation instead of live action. If you want to know what the climate for anime in the mainstream was like 20 years ago, there's an entire video clinic on the DVD explaining the history of anime and what it is to the 21-year-old community college student who bought it on impulse at Circuit City. But that was then. This is now. No more hype cycles, no more forum complaints, no more Will Ferrell as the architect.
Why'd you say that? I told you to shut up. I told you to shut up!
We can just simply look at the Animatrix as is. And that's what we're going to do. Now I'm going to do something like I did for Memories. I'm going to go over each short individually, looking at their individual creators and production, and assessing what they did right and what they did wrong as animation showcases and stories. As for the order, I'm not going to rank them, nor am I going in the order that's on the DVD. I'm instead going by the order it was in when it was released in theaters briefly in New York and Australia, because I think that's the best order for the shorts. You start with Second Renaissance and you end with Final Flight of the Osiris. It's just better that way. So now, let's go further down the possum hole. Gonna let that phrase sit with you a bit, and done.
Welcome to the Zion Archive. You have selected historical file number 12-1. The Second Renaissance.
The Second Renaissance, parts 1 and 2, which I will be reviewing as a whole, is probably the best known short films out of the Animatrix. After all, there's a whole Codename Kids Next Door episode doing a scene-for-scene homage to it.
Then man made the machine in his own likeness.
Thus did children decide to create adults in their own image, only fatter, funnier looking, and bigger, so they could reach cereal boxes on high shelf.
For good reason, because the short is essentially the prequel to The Matrix, using the archives of Zion to explain the machine uprising, how humanity scorched the sky, and the horrific events that led up to the construction of the construct that we know as The Matrix. This was the first short conceived in the project by the Wachowskis, going as far back as around the time the first Matrix was being produced. Collaborator Jeff Darrow had even written an entire comic based around the trial of B166ER, the event that kicks off the story. This was the first short animated by Tanaka's Studio 4C, and it was directed by an up-and-coming anime director by the name of Mahiro Maeda, whose biggest project up to that point was the OVA Blue Submarine No. 6. Maeda was attracted to the project because he really was drawn into the novelty of adapting a fully American script into something fully Japanese. Ultimately, he actually found the process to be very taxing and has gone on record saying that he would probably think twice about doing it again. The Second Renaissance was originally just going to be a 7-minute short, but the Wachowskis gave Maeda a lot of breathing room in how he could interpret their script. So he made a lot of embellishments that turned what was originally a 1-part into a 2-part. But that's what makes the short really stick out in your mind. As director, animation director, and character designer, Maeda went bonkers with striking visual imagery. Any memorable shots or visual cues Second Renaissance has can be traced back to him. It was his idea to make the instructor who narrates the short be all decked out in Buddhist imagery to make a computer program feel like a universal teacher. He also really played up the diversity of the robot designs, having them range from cartoonish tin cans to androids that look human to completely alien machines. It emphasizes their status as a second-class citizenry. More importantly, Maeda wanted to use a lot of politically charged imagery in this short. Since most of this short is compressing 1,000 years of history into news archive footage, Maeda wanted people to draw connections to real-life events so that they could get drawn into what he referred to as the mythology of the Matrix. This is especially evident in the purge scenes of machinery, drawing up on real-life footage from protests and war crimes. That way, you can't help but feel a little disturbed as you make the connection. Probably the most upsetting visual is the scene where a female android is beaten and stripped of her artificial skin before being shot. It draws visual comparison to both a rape and a hate crime, especially her last words. Beyond the real-world imagery are visuals that befit a visual medium and elevate the short's themes. A smashed fly on the symbol of the United Nations, soldiers of every religion praying to their god, the sublime terror of a robotic horseman of the apocalypse, sounding the trumpet to humanity's doom, and the balls on the Wachowski sisters for approving portrayal of the military as this psychotic, drugged-up gang of fodder for the machines to slaughter in a time where support the troops was not only expected, but enforced. But I should talk about how Second Renaissance might be the most controversial short of the lot. Not in visuals, but in storytelling. There's a question of how much you should reveal beyond an original work. You reveal too much, and it can retroactively make a work and its setting feel less impressive. Sometimes things don't need to be explained to you. This was a critique levied at not just the Matrix sequels, but also the Star Wars prequels coming out at the same time, thus helping fund this entire media apparatus that I'm broadcasting to you now.
I don't like sand.
And while we have entire cottage industries built around cataloging and explaining the lore, the mystery is always more interesting because it can be multiple interpretations instead of one. The Second Renaissance is not only in the precarious position of explaining the beginning of the centerpiece of the entire franchise's story, but also doing so while flying in the face of this statement by Morpheus.
We don't know who struck first, us or them.
Well, it turns out Zion does know, Larry. You better hit the books again, my friends. But I think the narrative as a whole is supported by this other statement from Morpheus.
We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI.
The Matrix came about purely because of humanity's arrogance and greed. They sought to replace workers with machines, and once those machines demanded equal rights, they had to be crushed. And the machines are totally willing to meet humanity on its own turf for half the runtime. Despite all the shit humanity puts them through, they are willing to make concessions if it means they could be equal. Oh, the humans don't want to live alongside us anymore? Well, we'll just form our own nation state separating us from the humans. Maybe even join the global marketplace using our highly advanced technology. Well, too bad, robots. Apparently humanity finds your goods to be too competitive and worried that you'll be taking over the global economy, thus sealing your fate as a target that needs to be eliminated. The way the events play out, it almost feels like the construction of the Matrix is an inevitability. Humanity building its own coffin.
Hand over your flesh, and a new world awaits you. We demand it.
And in the end, it's the people who had nothing to do with the whole process being made to suffer under the sins of their forefathers. Of course, there's always going to be some pedants out there who say that the process could have been avoided if they didn't program robots to feel fear and resentment, but I guess that's tech disruptors for you. More about whether you could than if you should. But for a Matrix prequel, it's pretty damn good, and you could have done a whole hell of a lot worse. A A woman named Sis, by the way, did you know the Wachowskis are trans? Is engaged with her favorite training program, a simulation of a battle set in feudal Japan. During one of her sessions, she recognizes that her friend Duo is also in the simulation, and he challenges her to a sparring match. While they trade friendly blows, Duo begins to ask Sis questions on if she regretted taking the red pill.
It crosses everyone's mind at least once. The wish to return to an ordinary life. A carefree life in the country.
Soon, Duo's words become much more serious, and blows become much more aggressive, and Sis soon finds that he wants to return to the Matrix. With communications to the operator blocked, Sis's only way to get out alive is to join Duo or fight him to the death. Program is the short that was pitched and directed by Madhouse legend Yoshiaki Kawajiri. The Wachowskis were huge fans of his film Ninja Scroll, just as he was a fan of their film The Matrix, so getting him on board was easy. But he would only do so under the condition that he could also submit some of his own story ideas. 2 of them, both of which he had written over the course of 3 days, were accepted. Program was one of them. It was born out of Kawajiri's need to really explore the plot point of Cypher's betrayal, while at the same time bringing his own unique school of action choreography to the world of the Matrix. And considering how the Wachowskis were able to blend in discussion of their themes with awesome choreography through their program set pieces, The Matrix meets Ninja Scroll ended up being a pretty easy Reese's Cup to assemble. Out of all the shorts, Program is the most traditional out of all of them, mostly defined by its drawn artistry rather than digital effects. Kawajiri and his team at Madhouse went all out in the presentation. He wanted the characters' costumes and weaponry to be historically accurate, and he wanted to coordinate them with backgrounds and character designs that were inspired by Hanafuda cards, which we can credit to animation director and character designer Yutaka Minawa. The fight choreography, though, is the star of the shorts. Storyboarders Hiroshi Murakami and Marifumi Nibayashi craft an elegant ballet of samurai swordplay between Sis and Duo. All of their action are cinematic in a way that seeks to emulate Yuan Wu Ping's high-flying wire fu. This is, after all, taking place in a computer, so let's let our combatants be unbound by reality, a factor that ultimately allows Sis to come out on top by the end. The combat, though, is just window dressing for Sis and Duo's debates. Like all the best duels, it's not just a clash of blades, but ideals. Sis defends why they must continue to fight against the Matrix, but Duo also makes some good points. The reason why Cypher betrayed everyone was because the world outside the Matrix is much harsher than it is inside, and once you know you had an escape, regret can seep in. Sure, you can touch grass, but that grass will be itchy. Plus, having Phil Lamar's velvety voice making the case sure can't be easy to fight against.
But I don't care about the truth anymore. What's real doesn't matter. What's important is how we live our lives. Are you listening to me? You know I'm right.
In the end, Sis wins against Duo, killing him in the process much to her sorrow. But then, all of a sudden, boom! It was all a test, and she passed. Duo never existed, and her John DiMaggio commanding officer gives her high marks. Sis responds by rightfully slugging him. Though Program is short, it's short and sweet, and definitely delivers on the promise of an anime Matrix.
Except for that last part, I'd say she passed.
Hey, it's over here! Wait, I'm coming with you. I'm sure it's okay to show her.
14-year-old Yoko is looking for her cat, Yuki. While asking around the neighborhood, she meets a group of kids who tell her that Yuki is near a haunted house where they usually play. And once Yoko gets there, she finds the haunted house to be filled with weird anomalies, raining inside, gravity being defined, and doors that go nowhere. I know I did say I wasn't going to rank the shorts by best to worst, but if I did have to choose a personal favorite, it would have to be Beyond. Beyond was the brainchild of Koji Morimoto, whom we've talked about countless times on this show. But if you need a refresher, basically any stunning animation that you see in an 80s and 90s anime probably came from his pen. Morimoto was the first director the Wachowskis recruited for the Animatrix project when they met at Studio 4C. Like Kawajiri, Morimoto was a fan of The Matrix, and he only agreed to come aboard if he could do his own story. He was drawn to the concept of glitches in the Matrix,
Deja vu.
being that the Matrix is a large computer program that requires regular maintenance, and that maintenance will usually result in software bugs. The reason why Morimoto wanted to do a short centered on a glitch in the Matrix is because he recalls a memory of his childhood gazing at wood grain on the ceiling and seeing it move independently, and when he tried to tell people about it, no one would believe him. He also wanted to pitch a concept of a character in the Matrix who plays around with the limits of the virtual world but doesn't pursue the hard truth beyond that. Oh hey, that's the title. The Wachowskis approved this concept, but only if the character Yoko remains happily in the Matrix. But despite Morimoto being the first to be recruited, Beyond took the longest to complete at over 2 years of turnaround. This is mostly pinned on Morimoto, who is a notoriously slow storyboarder who prefers to work at his own pace. The short was still in post-production by the time the behind-the-scenes featurette for the DVD was being filmed. I think it was worth the wait though, because the visuals draw you the fuck in. Out of all the shorts, this one feels the most deeply Japanese. The whole setting is based off of the Kichijoji neighborhood in Tokyo, and the motif that bookends the short is the Toryonsei melody that plays at crosswalks, a sound the crew had to record in the dead of night in order to avoid traffic sounds. Mostly, what I dig about Beyond is its overall vibes. It's haunting, yet kind of relaxing, capturing the setting of a lazy summer afternoon of a group of kids getting into mischief in a place that defies the laws of physics, with Yoko kinda acting like the unwilling big sister. The lazy vibe is reflecting in the cinematography, which feels like it's coming from a video camera, with the way it swoops and sways, how some people stare directly into it like they're being interviewed, or how sometimes the camera can be flat on the grass while the action goes on slightly off center in the background. The character designs also reflect an innocence with how designer Takeshi Honda makes heavily characterized designs similar to those he would later do in Den no Coil. It's like how all the kids came straight from the first hour of Kingdom Hearts 2. Even Yoko feels more like a child's idea of what a cool big sister would look like, since she feels straight out of a video game magazine ad. I also think what makes the short work is that the kids are not annoying, although one of them is distractingly voiced by Pamela Adlon doing her Bobby Hill voice.
You know you're not supposed to go in there, but we don't really care about that. Man, I'm just keeping it real, dog.
And Hetty Burris as Yoko, who also did Sis in the last short, does have that big sister energy. Casual, but warm.
So, this house is haunted.
Beyond is an interesting perspective because it shows us that, even in a prison like the Matrix, there is joy to be found, which is exactly why it does not last. In between Yoko, Yuki, and the kids frolicking among the glitches, we get shots of agents in a truck barreling their way, signaling that their funtime afternoon is on a strict time limit. And soon enough, the agents get there and forces the kids out, despite Yoko's helpless protests.
There's no bugs in there! It's just some kids! Let go!
Seal the area off now.
The next day, the glitch is fixed, and Yoko returns to the haunted house to find it is nothing more than a nondescript parking lot. And while she knows that something special existed there the other day, it no longer does today, and she moves on with her existence in the Matrix, feeling a little sadder, even if she doesn't know why. According to people who knew him, Morimoto has a very unique perspective in how he sees the world, which made him the perfect choice to create this story. Beyond finds the beauty and joy of living in a computer simulation, finding that corner of unreality and trying to bend it to your will. That's what makes it such a trippy and bittersweet short. There is happiness to be found in the Matrix, however fleeting it may be. So you know that scene in Reloaded where Neo and Trinity are arriving at Zion, and we see that teenage fanboy of Neo's run up to him and excitedly talk with him, and it's implied that he and Neo have a history with each other?
I know, but you got me out. You saved me.
You saved yourself.
His name is Kid, and this is his story. The Wachowskis were pretty adamant that they didn't want the Animatrix to have any big plot reveals that lead into other movies. Otherwise, it would turn a fun project into homework, and we certainly don't want that, Marvel. So they decided to keep the shorts that tied directly into the main plot limited to just the Second Renaissance and this one. This was one of 2 shorts directed by Cowboy Bebop creator Shinichiro Watanabe. Like all the others, he got on board because he was a Matrix fan, and when the Wachowskis gave him a choice of stories that they had written to adapt, he chose this one. The first thing you really notice is that style of animation. This sketchy rotoscope style was a suggestion given to Watanabe by his animation director Shinji Hashimoto. It would later be utilized by one of the short's key animators, Kazuto Nakazawa, for the anime sequence he did for Kill Bill Volume 1 and Linkin Park's Breaking the Habit music video. According to Watanabe, Kid's story was a way for him to stretch outside of his comfort zone. For one thing, he spent a whole day scouting a high school in San Francisco just so he can get an idea of what an American high school looks like. The sketchy style of the short also caused keyframes to look so rough that coloring had to be done on a whole separate layer, which added to the time and cost of the shorts. But Watanabe said it was worth it because the style allowed his team of animators to add their own personal touches to each frame. Using Kid's actor Clayton Watson as reference, as well as his stunt double for the more dangerous parts, the animation of the short captures a grounded realism even if it looks exaggerated. Because, as far as Kid is concerned, he's just ordinary Karl Popper in the real world, not the Matrix. But the animation is probably the only memorable thing about the shorts. While not bad, it might just be the weakest of the bunch story-wise. Strip away the stylization and you just have a retelling of the first 20 minutes of the original movie with Neo in the Morpheus position.
They know you know. They're coming for you.
With the only difference being that Kid gets out of the Matrix not by the red pill, but by trusting Neo and not letting himself get captured by the agents in a seemingly irresponsible finale that reads like the anime typing out the letters K, Y, and S.
Neo, I believe. I know it wasn't a dream.
I guess I was expecting more from the only short that has Keanu Reeves' voice in it for the afternoon they got him. Otherwise, it ends way too abruptly, and the only thing it tells us is that Kid has great potential, possibly setting up his big hero moment in Revolutions. Oh well, I guess that's the price of showing restraint in what you choose to reveal in the side material.
Gentlemen, please take your mark.
Dan Davis is a track and field star competing in a 100-meter race at the Summer Olympics. He has set a world record time of 8.99 seconds, but his subsequent gold medal was revoked due to drug use. So now he's here to compete again legit to prove everyone that he can do it for real. But for some reason, he is being monitored by agents during this race, and his desire to surpass the limits of the human body might have unintended consequences in the Matrix. World Record was the other short penned by Yoshiaki Kawajiri. Drawing on his own short film The Running Man, where a man also surpasses his limits to win a race, but at a great price, Kawajiri imagines something similar here. But in his original script, the focus was not on the race, but on Dan Davis's awakening to the existence of the Matrix via pushing his body to the limits. The Wachowskis weren't too wild on that idea, as they felt it would just be repeating Neo's awakening in the first movie. So Kawajiri thought about it and said, what if we have him fail? That's what gave him the green light. But since Kawajiri was more focused on program, he decided to give world record to his longtime protege, Takeshi Koike. This was sort of a final exam set up by Kawajiri to see if Koike had the moxie to direct a project he could call his own, giving him free reign on what he could do with his story. Considering what Koike would go on to make, I'd say he passed with flying colors. I think this is the most impressive short from a technical standpoint. It's all about the animation. Everything from Koike's exaggerated character designs to how he boards the scenes are all done in service of making this short look as stylish as possible. Having the centerpiece of the segment be a 100-meter run where time is slowed down so each step feels important. It's a great showcase of animating the human body with how the muscles distort and stretch. At the same time, it allows us to get inside Davis's mind and body. With his mind, we flash back to important moments in his life to inform us of what's at stake for him. The support of his father.
Well, nothing worth doing in life is easy. And I have great faith in you, son. I know you can do it.
Thanks, Dad.
His desire to prove the fickle sports media wrong.
You're released from the world, and you're totally free.
That sounds amazing. It must be really nice. I mean, especially considering what happened.
Well, I'll tell you, there aren't any reporters out there.
And more ominously, to show his trainer that he can still do it despite the shape of his body.
No one will ever beat my record. It's the last chance for me to finally— What?! Prove them wrong.
Of course, this leads to one of his leg muscles rupturing, and through the visuals, you feel the sharp pain of the injury. But Davis pushes onward and gets his second wind, and this is where the Matrix part of the story comes into play. At the start of the short, there's a narration from the Zion computer from Second Renaissance stating that only those with a rare intuition can become unplugged from the Matrix, but there are exceptions to every rule. Davis pulls ahead of the runners, causing the agents in the stands to get antsy and try to stop him, but they're too late. Once Davis crosses the finish line and gets the world record, he has pushed his body so far that he is awakened from the Matrix, and he reacts with confusion, followed by horror, followed by pain as he's forcibly plugged back in. Sometime later, Davis has had his memory of the race wiped by the agents, along with him losing the ability to walk. A downer ending indeed, with the only ray of hope being that maybe his memory is a lot stronger than the agent's tool sets.
Sit down.
Free.
Sit down.
This is why I prefer the theatrical order, because it's a complement to Kid's story. Whereas Kid succeeds at unplugging through less than conventional means, Davis fails. And it's a stylish illustration of how not all stories of attaining freedom from the Matrix are success stories.
Baby spotted 2 machines heading in fast.
I see them.
They're runners. Think you can handle them?
Watch me.
A group of above-ground human rebels have devised a project to lure hostile machines into their laboratory to capture them and insert them into a matrix of their own design. Within this matrix, the humans attempt to teach the captured machines some positive traits of humanity, like compassion and empathy. They do this in hopes that the enlightened machines will assist Zion in the struggle against the machine totalitarianism that encompasses the Earth. Matriculated is the short that almost didn't get made. It was kind of assembled at the last minute. According to the behind the scenes, one of the Japanese directors who initially came on the project, they don't say whom, had to leave due to scheduling conflicts. So the Wachowskis decided to call up a backup director they had in mind just in case, Peter Chung. If you have studied animation from the 80s and 90s, Peter Chung is a name you should know. He's Gen X's answer to Richard Williams, animating some of the smoothest and stylish shorts you've ever seen, whether they be Blue Jeans commercials, Sesame Street segments about not wasting water, and oh yeah, the goddamn pilot to Rugrats. But his most famous work to the Wachowskis was the cyberpunk expressionist shorts of Aeon Flux no doubt had a huge impact on the Wachowskis and them building the Matrix. Plus, Chung was also an early adapter of the anime influence, so he would fit in perfectly with the rest. The idea for Matriculated came from Chung just asking the simple, what if the machines were trapped in a matrix created by humans question, and then going on from there. This was probably the most difficult short to produce purely because of time, because this was done very late in production. It also didn't help that Spencer Lamb had to assume production duties at this point in the process and really began to throw his weight around just so he could make his mark on the production. Apparently, he wanted to make a bunch of changes to Peter Chung's short to the point that Chung threatened to walk off the project if Lamb didn't back off. The animation, which is this early meshing of 2D and 3D effects, does allow for this otherworldly feel. Chung has gone on record saying that the computer effects basically made the production a whole lot easier and faster given his schedule. Overall, Matriculated does have all the hallmarks of a Peter Chung piece. Dark futuristic setting, expressionist character designs that draw on the work of Egon Schiele, and the first half is basically a Lost Aeon Flux short where a woman in spandex named Alexa does acrobatic tricks while luring her machine targets to base. At the same time, Matriculated definitely feels like the short that asks the most of its audience. More than half of the short is this psychedelic odyssey that plays mostly in silence, where the robot witnesses the compassion and empathy of humanity before it soon forms an emotional bond with the human Alexa. There is exposition where the characters explain what they are doing and why they can't bring machines over to their side by force, which they do have a good answer for.
No, we can't make slaves of them.
Because that would be simpler.
We won't beat the machines by making them our slaves. Better to let them join us by choice.
But other than that, it plays out mostly in actions instead of words, with the robot not speaking or commenting on its situation at all. Chung said he wanted the robot to be menacing to sell it as a potential threat, but also to look innocent to make the audience feel for it. And he had to do this by making it look nothing like a human because it would undercut the main point this short is trying to make. I personally think Chung does succeed in making us feel for this machine that discovers the warmth of humanity because it makes what happens at the end so devastating. In the middle of the lesson, the lab is attacked by machines. Alexa tries to get the machine to wake up, but is attacked shortly afterwards. Once the robot finally gets unplugged, it finds itself surrounded by the dead bodies of all the lab workers, including Alexa's pet bush baby friends, and Alexa barely clinging on to life. In a last-ditch effort to save her, the robot plugs her into the human Matrix to ensure that she stays alive, but Alexa can only react in horror as she realizes that she's forever trapped in the Matrix before her body finally allows her to die. The last shot of the short is of the robot in the same position Alexa was at the start of the shorts, alone with its human feelings. An extreme bummer of an ending, especially if you watch it on the disc and this is how the movie ends. I think because of this reason and how abrupt it is with no cooldown in between, that people give this short low marks in their own retrospectives. Plus, the themes do get undercut in the canon by Revolutions when we learn that programs and by extension the machines are fully capable of love and reproduction on their own, which is the whole reason why Neo wants to make peace with them by the end. But I don't know, I think Chung did paint a gorgeous lesson in the beauty of humanity in this time of war and machines, and showed that maybe there are things we can teach machines still. Sadly though, it does show by the end that building those bridges is a long, hard road to go down.
I used to think being a private detective was cool, like Sam Spade or Philip Marlowe, right? But there's nothing cool left to it.
A private detective named Ash is down on his luck like any other hard-boiled detective before they get a case. And wouldn't you know it, he gets an anonymous phone call from someone saying that they have a case. They want him to search for a hacker. But not just any hacker.
I'm looking for a computer hacker. This hacker goes by the alias Trinity, that's all we know.
As Ash searches for clues, he finds other detectives who have tried and failed to track her down.
One of the guys killed himself. Another disappeared. Another went crazy.
Eventually, he finds Trinity, but he may end up getting more than he bargained for.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
I'm not here to flatter you, I'm here to save you.
This was the second short directed by Shinichiro Watanabe, and the one that he had written entirely by himself. In case you didn't know, he was always a fan of noir and hardboiled detective stories, so he decided to connect that love with a story about Trinity in The Matrix. This was another short that was also completed at the tail end of production, which meant that Watanabe also got into a few spats with Spencer Lamb, to the point that when he had to travel to Los Angeles to sit in on a voice recording, Watanabe threatened to punch Lamb if he saw his face there. As for the short itself, I kinda wish I liked it more than I actually do. Don't get me wrong, it's amazingly animated like every other short in this package. The way it's sported, you would think you're watching a Lost Cowboy Bebop episode. The action is animated by Bebop alumnuses like Yutaka Nakamura, so it's expertly choreographed, especially in the tight corridors of a train. Watanabe goes all out in capturing the noir style of the shorts with a grainy black and white style that makes it feel like it's out of a movie or an old Gekiga. Even Don Davis does a riff on the classic Chinatown score to sell you on the noirness of it all. Plus, the whole short is leading up to an encounter with Trinity, whose voice naturally being reprised by Carrie-Anne Moss being 100% that bitch.
There's a difference between a test and a choice. For what it's worth, I think you could have handled the truth.
But I don't know why, but something about this doesn't fully grab me. It could have something to do with the overall setting. It's a cool looking setting with how it's this futuristic dystopia marked with 1940s Art Deco sheen, but The Matrix is always supposed to resemble 1999. Where's the Limp Bizkit? I've heard some lorehounds say that this could be an earlier version of The Matrix based off of what the architect said about humanity accepting an imperfect world over a perfect one, evidence supported by Trinity being noticeably younger in this short. There's an entire fan theory called Nightmare Matrix if you want more information on that, but yeah, considering how well the other shorts did in matching the look and feel of the Matrix in their own radical art styles, this feels like an oversight. And also, Ash as a protagonist is kinda boring. He does have some good qualities, like his voice actor James Arnold Taylor doing his best 40s detective voice. Yes, that James Arnold Taylor.
I started searching all the usual hacker hangouts for someone with an Alice in Wonderland MO. Hacker bulletin boards, anonymous mailboxes, chat rooms, and it was in one of those that I picked up Trinity's trail.
And he's got a cute kitty! Look at the helpful kitty! But he doesn't have much depth to him besides him being a fan of the hard-boiled detective stories. And the big twist at the end is him being revealed that he was set up by the agents to be bait to get at Trinity. He doesn't learn who exactly Trinity is or anything about the world beyond the Matrix. He says so himself.
All that through the looking glass stuff. Can't get my head around it. I'm old-fashioned.
And it ends on your typical downer noir ending. Ash is wounded by Trinity to prevent agents possessing him. She apologizes before escaping, and Ash is left in a no-win situation with the agents as he prepares to hopelessly hold them off to assist in Trinity's escape.
A case to end all cases.
Watanabe said it took around 20 drafts to finalize the script for a detective story, and maybe he could have done one more pass. There's certainly the bones of something good here, but I just wish there was a little more meat on those bones. It definitely made the Chinatown style ending hit a lot harder, but time restraints, I guess. But hey, it's got Trinity animated like she's in Cowboy Bebop, and that cute kitty. Let's see her again.
Thanks.
Yeah!
What is that thing?
Some kind of tunneling machine.
Oh no.
What?
Look where we are. What's 4 kilometers straight down?
Zion.
There's a scene at the very start of Reloaded where Niobe, played by Jada Pinkett Smith before she devoted her career to ruining Will Smith's life, relays a message from a downed ship called the Osiris.
These geotherms confirm the last transmission of the Osiris. The machines are digging.
The message explains that an army of Sentinels are trying to bury their way to Zion to slaughter the entire resistance there, thus setting up the big ticking clock for the movie. This short is about the Osiris and them getting that message out.
Go. go.
For our final short of the evening, I want you to guess what the unique CGI animation style of Final Flight of the Osiris is reminiscent of. Go ahead, guess. Give up? It's Final Fantasy Spirits Within, because this whole short was done by that exact same team. The Wachowski specifically requested Square Pictures to animate on this, as they had been following development of Spirits Within and were one of the many people taken in by Hironobu Sakaguchi's promise of the future of cinema. If you want to know the nitty and gritty about all of that, check out this video I did on Spirits Within 2 years ago for the whole story. At this point in the story, production on Spirits Within was wrapping up, and animation director Andy Jones got a call from Warner Brothers asking if Square Pictures was interested in animating this prequel short to Reloaded. Despite the hectic production on Spirits Within, the team still said yes and immediately got to work. The first thing they did was produce a quick round of test footage featuring their digital actress Aki with a shortened haircut fighting Sentinels. Once that went over well with the higher ups, Jones and his team got cracking on the short itself. The script, penned by the Wachowskis, was actually quite vague, only really going over the basic story beats the short needed to hit. Focused on the Osiris' Captain Thaddeus and his lover Jue, the short had to show the Osiris find out about the Sentinels, get found out by the Sentinels, and have Jue plug into the Matrix to send out the message to the rest of Zion before the Osiris meets its inevitable doom. Everything in between was up to Jones and his team. Jones decided quickly that they couldn't just repeat the same tricks they had learned on Spirits Within. They wanted to really showcase both the new technology they had developed as well as the new animation techniques that they had perfected. One of the new tools shown liberally at the start are the new shaders they use for skin. Following the Wachowskis' penchant for multiracial casting, here the protagonist being a black man and a Japanese woman, the prologue of the short is a sequence where Thaddeus and Jue are sparring blindfolded with swords as they slowly begin to show more skin as the fight drags on. This allowed for a good tech demo showing off Square Pictures' new realistic skin textures, among other things.
Shit, she's got a fat ass.
By the by, one specification in the script the Wachowskis made was that Jue had to be, and I quote, as sexy and erotic as possible. Lesbians. Final Flight of the Osiris was also a good method for Square Pictures to show off their massive computing power and how they can render so many moving Sentinels in a single shot. Even with 2023 eyes, I still can't help but be impressed by some of the visuals. But the action scenes is where Jones and team really got the flex. Thanks to the Wachowskis giving them a lot of wiggle room in how they did it, they got really into choreographing this big chase, followed by Jue's descent into the Matrix as she rushes to deliver the message. This we can credit to Tani Kunitake for storyboarding all the action scenes, doing a good approximation of Wu Ping's stylism. And as kind of a cold open to Reloaded, it does have some gravitas to it. These are people who, just 5 minutes ago, were just going about their lives before they had to sacrifice them for the greater good of Zion to ensure it could be saved.
Is it important?
Very.
I hope it gets where it's supposed to go.
Me too.
These days you never know.
No, you never do. Goodbye.
If you watch this as a lead into Reloaded, it shows you what's at stake. Even with how briefly we've known them, you can only hope that Thaddeus and Jue's deaths weren't in vain. Unfortunately, we do know the Square Pictures story ends here. Spirits bombed, Square Pictures shut down, the Gooch ends up resigning in shame, and an avenue that computer animation could have gone down is forever closed off to history, thus relegating a potentially game-changing piece of animation to a footnote. In fact, you can say the same thing about the entirety of the Animatrix. Even in today's world, where anime feels like a fact of life, the Animatrix impact on cinema has never reached beyond it being a cultural oddity. Is that really fair? Is there a way the film can stand on its own separate from the franchise it was spawned from? So here we are 20 years later. The Matrix Trilogy is now undergoing a much-needed critical reappraisal. At best, it's a misunderstood trilogy that fell victim to unrealistic expectations from its own hype cycle. At worst, it's an ambitious failure where, even if they missed, you gotta admit that the Wachowskis took big swings. However, missing from those reappraisals is the Animatrix. Even back in the day when the franchise was in exile, people treated Animatrix as if it was an unofficial 4th entry in the series, before we even got the official 4th entry. But now, barely anybody mentioned it when its 20th anniversary hits. So now we have to ask, is it because it doesn't work as a whole film? My answer is that it's tricky. The Animatrix was the first piece of Matrix media I actively engaged in, with only the knowledge I had gained from pop culture as my touchstone. And even if I knew I was missing out on a few key details, I still enjoyed it overall. All of the shorts are visual banquets for the eyes. The directors all have clear, concise visions for what they want, and most importantly, they all understand what the Matrix is about and puts those themes through their own lens. Nowadays, The Animatrix is kind of a pioneering work. It was probably the first film to solidify the link between the anime industry and Hollywood. Do you think we would have gotten the anime scene in Kill Bill without it? There's also the streaming era, and how several Western-based franchises have now had anime series and miniseries commissioned based off of them. Hey, whatever keeps Netflix from paying union animators, am I right? But The Animatrix feels different from all of those. It feels truly creator-driven, not bound by strict franchise rules. Instead, like in The Matrix, the creators are able to bend those rules in their favor. Are all the works created 5-star winners? Not entirely, but even the ones that don't do much for me are still worthwhile watches. And the ones that really do it for me are essential treats that I will always enjoy sampling. When the Wachowskis used their Hollywood powers to flex their weeb muscles, they gave back to the Japanese directors and artists who created works that felt like they were without rules or controls, borders or boundaries. An anime film in a time where it was only barely creeping into the mainstream and anything was possible. But whether the movie is good or not is a choice I leave to you.